Hello and welcome to the next edition in our Gifted Education series. Today we'll be focusing on the topic, Helping My Gifted Child Succeed. My name is Dr. Jo Tuite and I thank you for joining me. To give you just a little bit about my background, I've worked in gifted education for 34, going on 35 years now, and my educational background is a bit varied. I have undergraduate degrees in business and in sociology. I have a master's in educational administration and a doctorate in educational leadership with a focus on gifted education. Lending context to my education and background would be my 4 kiddos. I'm the proud parent of 4 kids who have varying educational experiences and needs, from requiring special education services to a creative thinker to a high achiever and a high ability learner. So again, those experiences that I've had alongside my children have definitely lent context to my experiences as working in gifted education, as well as my educational background. So with that, let's dive right into today's topic. Unless otherwise noted, much of the information that I'll be sharing with you today relies heavily on the resources that you see on the screen in front of you. I'd like to point out particularly a couple of those resources. First is the National Association for Gifted Children. They have a tremendous amount of resources for parents and educators alike on their website, so I do highly recommend that. I also recommend the work, particularly in the fields of gifted education and creativity, by Dr. Lisa Rubenstein. And then finally, you'll see a book that's kind of at the top of that list called A Parent's Guide to Gifted Children. That also is a fantastic resource, and so I would definitely recommend that one as well. On your screen, you'll see a list of the topics that we're going to cover in our discussion today. While the last 3 items actually may seem like very different topics, they're all actually really important components in helping our gifted children to be successful. And while this presentation is geared primarily toward elementary or older elementary kids, don't bug out on me because I said that. The topics that I discuss and some of the resources and ideas I share are actually good for students of all ages. So to get us started, I want to make sure that we all have kind of a foundational understanding. So I'm going to take just a moment and talk a little bit about or define rather high achieving, gifted, and creative students to give us a foundation. You see on the screen there in front of you some basic definitions for our 3 types of learners: our high achievers, our high ability or gifted learners, and our creative thinkers. Our high achievers are those students who tend to exercise grit. They're the students that kind of dig in, they push hard, they work hard in order to achieve the goals that they've set for themselves. The high ability or gifted learners, and those are 2 terms used interchangeably, high ability and gifted, they're used interchangeably. These are the students who show the potential for demonstrating a high level of performance in their work and achievement compared to other students who are similar age, similar environment. And then finally, we have our creative thinkers. Our creative thinkers are those students who kind of have that unique way of looking at the world around them. They're those students who have the unique approach in class. They're the students that have lots and lots of questions and ideas just kind of going off all over the place. So again, those are our 3 different types of learners: high achievers, high ability or gifted learners, and our creative thinkers. Now that we have this foundation of understanding for the 3 types of learners, let's move on. In this next slide, you see the 3 types of learners broken down into a chart with some characteristics that you may see in each of those 3 types of learners display. There are lots of them. I'm not going to go over all of them, but you'll see the ones with orange arrows, and I do just want to kind of point those out real quickly. You see that first one. Our high achievers are those students that tend to generate ideas as they're sitting in class discussions or working with a group or on their individual assignments. They're able to sit read through, process, and generate ideas. Our high ability or gifted learners, they're generating ideas, but they're complex and abstract ideas. So they go a little deeper or demonstrate a higher level of understanding. And then our creative thinkers, as I mentioned a moment ago, those are those students that are just kind of overflowing with ideas. They've got lots of thoughts coming in every different direction, many of which their ideas will never fully be developed, but they've got the ideas and they've got lots of them. You'll see that next orange arrow is talking about the number of times a student needs to see or be exposed to information, class lesson topics in order to master it. So our high achievers need about 6 to 8 repetitions in order to master a topic or subject matter. Our high ability or gifted learners, they only need about 1 to 3 times to actually master it. And then our creative thinkers, they question the need for mastery at all. And then if you drop down there to the bottom to our third orange arrow, you'll see that high achievers, they're pleased with their own learning. So they've set the goal to learn, they study, they master, and they're really pleased with that. Our high ability or gifted learners, they are extremely self-critical. So as they're learning material, many of them often feel like they can never learn enough, they can never go deep enough, they can never analyze the content enough. So they're very self-critical with that. And then our our creative thinkers, again, they're never finished with the possibilities. So they're continuing to think about the topics and the information presented and the different ideas that they may be able to generate within that area. So these again are 3 learners and the different ways that their characteristics may present. It's important to note though that these characteristics are also fluid. So you may have a high ability student with characteristics of a creative thinker, and a creative thinker may have characteristics of a high achiever. They're not set in stone, they are very fluid. So now that we've defined our 3 types of learners and we put some characteristics around that, let's go ahead and jump into our 3 topics that I'd like to discuss: motivation and learning, developing a growth mindset, and dealing with challenges. Let me ask you a question. When are we motivated to do our best? When are you motivated to do your best? For me, it's when I'm really interested in whatever it may be. If I have an interest in the topic, I am motivated to really dig in, to do my best, to learn the most, to do the best, right? Another time is when I have the ability. If it's something that comes easy to me, or something that I've already worked really hard at, so I have a strong foundational knowledge of, that's when I'm motivated to do my best, because again, it's something that I have the ability for. And then the third time or third way that we're often motivated to do our best is when we see value or purpose in what we're doing. When we can see that this is going to have value either to us or to others, we can see the purpose, kind of what that end result is going to be and the impact that it's going to have, then again, we're motivated to do our best. Interests lead to a love of learning. And one of the ways that we can help our children is to help them develop those interests, again, because those interests will lead to a love of learning. And so how do we help them do that? How do we help our children discover what they're interested in, what their passions are? There are a few different ideas that I can share with you. One of those would be inventories, reaching out to family and friends and neighbors, looking in our own backyards and checking out different resources within the community, state, and nation. So let's go ahead and take a little bit deeper dive into each of those, and I'll share some ideas with you. So first, our interest inventories, and you can see some examples on the screen there in front of you. These come in all different sorts of topics and configurations, and for different age groups. You can find a wonderful a number of these actually online for free. You can Google those or look them up. The ones that you see on your screen is exactly what I did. I put in a search parameter and those popped up. So the one on the far left there, that one is meant for more of a high school age student, and it's asking questions about college and career. So again, those are questions that you can ask your student. You don't necessarily have to give them the piece of paper and say, here's the don't answer these questions. But in casual conversation, you could actually ask those and gather the answers. And again, this is going to help you to identify your high schoolers' interests, particularly in the area of for this one in the area of school and career, but there are others out there as well that you could utilize with your high schoolers. That center one there is for lower elementary school students. You'll see that it has pictures along with very simple words, and this one is asking questions about what the student would like to read about. And then you'll see the one on the far right. That one's for either upper elementary or lower middle school students, and it's asking questions about likes, dislikes, dreams, and giving some scenarios. So again, these are some very simple inventories that you can give to your kiddos, and it will help you as the parent to help them find what their interests are, and then you can build out from there some ways to help them really kind of dive into those interests and learn more about them. Another way of helping your child discover their interests is kind of just exploring what's in your own backyard. So let's take a look at the slide on that. So I use the term in your own backyard, and it can literally be in your own backyard. You can take your toddler, for example, to your backyard and look at grass and explore the different shapes and the textures. Students or little ones, love the smells, so they can smell the grass and see if there's a difference. You can look at dandelions and look at all the different pieces of a dandelion, bees, butterflies, lots of different things in the backyard that can capture your toddler's attention, and that you could use to expand their learning, but also to see what they're interested in by where their eyes and their interests go. Another one is visiting museums. A lot of times during breaks and holidays, you'll find that museums offer discounted rates or even free for students to come in and explore and spend some time within the museums. And so this can be a fantastic way, again, for you and your child to not only bond and have an enjoyable day, but to kind of, again, watch them to see where their interests lie. Visiting libraries, also fantastic for all ages. For the younger kids, many libraries will offer those story times. Of course, they have fantastic books and videos, DVDs, music, again, so another great opportunity for your students to be able to explore their interests. One of the favorites in my house is educational games, though we don't call them educational games, we just call them games. Categories can be really fun, and a great way to, again, tap into their interests. You can use games also to kind of reformat the way they're played. My youngest enjoyed the game when she was little called Apples to Apples, but she didn't necessarily like playing it by the rules. She liked to deal out the cards, and then based on the cards that you received, you had to put them in order to tell a story. If you've played Apples to Apples, you know that with some of those cards, that can be a challenge. But it was a fantastic way not only to stimulate her creativity, but also to see where her interests were lying. Another game that we found a lot of fun with all of our kids is called Timeline. There are many different versions of Timeline where you get little cards that have topics on them, and you lay them in order of either when they were invented or when they happened in history, and see how close you get. And those can spur some fantastic family discussions. There's Quirkle, which is kind of a strategy, forward-thinking game. And then Smath. That was another one that we enjoyed with our kiddos, especially when they were on the younger side, learning to do addition and subtraction and so forth. And then finally, travel. Now, travel can be challenging with work schedules and with cost and all of that, but it can also be a wonderful learning experience for your child. One of the things that I know can be very beneficial, that can be a great learning opportunity for students, is to let them pick a destination. We would do this with short trips just within the area, and we would have our children pick a location within maybe a 2-hour drive. And then they would get the old time maps, the ones that that are printed out and you have to fold and you can never get them folded back the way they were. We would give them the map and have them plot out then our driving directions to get there. And along the route we would stop and we would look at leaves and we'd pick up rocks and find little souvenirs and things within nature, and we would take those with us to serve as memories, but for later down the road to be able to use that to learn about the leaves, to take a look at the rocks and see what type of rocks they were, and to do crafting. So again, it was just another fun little way to learn along the drive. So again, those are just a few ways of using some of the resources in your backyard. Another way to utilize your community is actually utilizing your community. So let's look at that slide. So within our community, we have lots of different careers that are represented. And this can be good for younger kids as well as older teens. For the younger kids, it's kind of fun to pick a career that seems fun or interesting to them. My grandson, he's fascinated, or at least when he was little, he was so fascinated with tractors and backhoes and those big construction items. And so we would take him to the county fair, where they often had those pieces of equipment for the kids to come and look at and climb all over. And so we would take him and teach him about the different parts of that equipment. You can if there's a bakery nearby that your student might be interested in learning aspects of baking, you can go visit the bakery and maybe ice a cookie, and then at home take that further by teaching how to bake bread. And as they get older, there's a science to that, right? And so you can teach the science aspect, why you have to, why yeast and sugar need to go together in warm water to cause it to bloom, what proofing is, and those types of things. So connecting with people within the community in these different careers is a great way for students to explore their different interests. If you're like me and you have more than one child and at varying ages, this can still work. You can do, maybe a dance class, right? So you have an older student who's interested in the sciences, perhaps, and a younger one that is just kind of exploring. So you can take your kiddos maybe to a dance class where the younger one can go in and learn how to do a turn or to do a leap. And the older student, as they're watching this, they can take some notes, maybe some pictures, and then work on later the physics of how they are able to do that, how they're able to do a turn, how they're able to do a leap. So maybe not the best example, but you get the idea. You can make it work with different levels of students and a common topic or location. Another way of helping your kiddo to discover what their interests are is to participate in classes and enrichment activities. Many times schools will offer some really fantastic summer school options. Those are wonderful to take advantage of. And then there are some online programs that you can engage with as well. And then there are the enrichment activities. And a lot of the different community and local colleges will have options for students to do during the summer primarily, but also summer on weekends. The Jerry program out of Purdue University, they'll have Saturday programs off and on throughout the year, as well as a fantastic assortment of summer programs. Northwestern University also has fantastic enrichment programs, as well as some regular classes for students to engage in and expand their interest, as well as earn some additional credits for high school. Ball State University, they also have some fantastic courses geared for both younger elementary age students as well as up through your high school students. So these are fantastic options. You'll see on the screen there, that's actually my daughter participating in some enrichment programs. You'll see that she has some graham crackers in one of the pictures in front of her. That's when she was in an enrichment program and they were studying architecture and building and some of the foundational principles of that. You see the one of her crawling around the floor with a balloon. She participated in an enrichment program where they were learning and playing games from different countries all around the world. She participated in one that was cooking based and another that they did a lot of dissections. I think the picture on the screen there is of a frog and they dissected a fish, and I'm not sure what else they did, but she loved all of these. She participated in a poetry enrichment program and a summer writing project. So we put her into a lot of these different types of enrichment programs so that she could experience them and see which ones that were really of interest to her, and those were the ones that she would ask to do again at a later time. So it was helpful for us in being able to see where her interests lie, but it was also really helpful for her because she was able to gain a really solid foundation of a lot of different experiences that helped her throughout her educational career. As your child is exploring their different interests, it's really important to link that back to education. A lot of programs will do that already, but if they don't, it'll be important as the parent for you to make sure that those interests are linking back to education. So I just have an example on the screen there in front of you. Let's say a student has shown interest in butterflies, baseball, and back walkovers. So how are we going to link that then to education? So let's say with the butterflies. So as they're watching butterflies, you can talk with them about the different parts of a butterfly. You can talk with them and teach them the life cycle. You can even purchase and I forget the word's eluding me, but you can purchase a butterfly basically and watch it go through the caterpillar phase, chrysalis, and adult, and become this beautiful butterfly that they, set free. You can talk about where they live, what they eat, how to hold them so that it doesn't hurt their wings. So again, we're connecting that passion or interest in butterflies to the education. With baseball, you can talk to them about where the baseball teams are located and discuss the different geographic components of that. You can talk with them about the team names and how those were developed and what they might mean. You can talk to them about the science of a fastball or a knuckleball. And then with the back walkover, you can talk with them about the physics of how that works, and you can talk with them about when it's best for, at what age it's best for a student to learn a back walkover and what the different variations of that are, and what muscles are engaged during a back walkover. So again, just 3 random topics here, but taking those interests and connecting them to education. And often it's because it's an interest, it's fun. They often don't realize that they're learning, that it's an educational component to this. Very quickly though, I did want to mention that as parents, we don't have to know all of this. We don't have to be experts in these areas. We can enjoy the adventure and the learning process alongside our student. We can walk that journey with them. Next, we're going to talk about growth mindset. It was about 30 some years ago that Dr. Carol Dweck from Stanford University and her research team started looking at the attitudes of students as it pertained to failure. And out of that grew the growth mindset. And you can see there a definition on your screen. And let's take just a moment to read that. You thrive on challenge and don't see failure as a way to describe yourself, but as a springboard for growth and developing your abilities. abilities, your intelligence and talents are all susceptible to growth. So just very simply put, it means you believe that your basic abilities will grow and improve through hard work and help from others. So I kind of want to take just a moment and comparing the two types of mindset. So mindset is on this continuum, right? With on one end we have the fixed mindset, and on the other end we have the growth mindset. So to kind of compare how those would look together, with the fixed mindset, let's say something doesn't work. A person with a fixed mindset is going to say, yep, well, I can't do this, can't do it. It's not gonna work. I'm not going to try, can't do it. Whereas a person with a growth mindset is going to say, okay, that didn't work, but let's try this, right? They're thinking of different ways. They're not willing to give up. They know that they just have to keep trying, right? Let's say when they're trying to complete a task. Somebody with a fixed mindset is going to say, this work is good enough, right? They've got it to a point. It's kind of meeting the need, kind of answering the question, good enough. Or somebody with a growth mindset is going to look at that and say, is this really my best work? Have I really put into it everything I need to put into it? Can I do any more? Does it need any tweaking, right? So they're thinking. When faced with a challenge, somebody with that fixed mindset is just going to, this is too hard, tapping out, too difficult. Somebody with that growth mindset is going to be more like, okay, I need to take a breath. It's going to be hard. It's going to take some effort, but I can do it. Okay, you see the difference there between that fixed mindset of this is where I'm at, this is all I can do, and that growth mindset where, okay, let's keep trying, let's tweak this, let's do that. We're not going to necessarily give up. So how do we develop a growth mindset in our children? So you're going to see on your screen there a couple of really fantastic graphics with some ideas on how to help our kids to develop that growth mindset. And I'm going to pull just a few of those out and talk about them just very briefly. One of the ways that we can help our kids to develop that growth mindset is to help them listen to their internal dialogue. So if you hear your students saying, what if I fail? Or if I don't try, then nobody's going to see me fail. So helping them to hear that and change that dialogue. So changing it to, I'm not sure I can do it, but it's worth a try. If I don't try, that's a failure, and there's no dignity in that. So again, just kind of helping them to reframe the way they're talking to themselves. Another idea is to help them in stopping to seek approval from other people. It's hard for kids, it's hard for adults sometimes, where we can be people pleasers and we can seek that approval from other people, and we can constantly compare ourselves to others. So helping our students to identify when they're doing that, when they're comparing themselves with somebody else, and aiding them in recognizing that number one, that they're doing that, and that they don't need to compare themselves with somebody else, that they on their own are enough, that they're good, they're perfect, they're fine on their own. I always hesitate using the word perfect because that can have some other issues if they're just focusing on perfection, but that's a topic for another day. But again, helping them to recognize when they're comparing themselves with others, and helping them to begin at least understanding that they just need to compare themselves to themselves, right? Helping our students, particularly starting this younger, but it's important throughout our entire lives, to replace the word failing with learning. One of my daughter's second grade teacher taught her that the word fail was just a first attempt in learning, and that mistakes helped her brain to grow. And she really grabbed onto that as a little second grader, and she repeated that many times throughout her elementary and middle school careers. Didn't hear it much as a high schooler, but I know it was still in there. That failure is your first attempt in learning, and making mistakes helps your brain to grow, helps you to learn. I think those are two very fantastic ways of looking at that, and can kind of sometimes take the pressure off for a student, understanding that these things, while they may not feel good in the moment, they're going to help me down the line, right? They're going to help me learn more. As parents, I don't like to see my kids struggle. I'm sure you don't like to see your kids struggle either. But it's in those moments of struggle that our kids, and we alike, have our most growth. So sometimes it's really important to let our kids, let ourselves sit in those moments of struggle, so that they can work through that and have those moments of growth. And I like this final graphic about growth mindset that I have on the screen here. Growth mindset is a child who isn't afraid to struggle. They're not afraid to fail. They're not afraid to try, because they know that mistakes and failure are part of the learning process, and it's going to help them to progress and move forward. Next, let's talk about challenges. First, we need to understand the challenge that our student is having. So what is contributing to that challenge? Is your child bored? Are they too challenged? Is there a learning issue that we may not have noticed before? Is there a lack of interest in school or in whatever the situation may be, or whatever area that is? Is the student feeling overwhelmed? Perhaps perfectionism they're struggling with issues of perfectionistic tendencies. So what is contributing to that challenge? And is your child troubled by the challenge? So knowing this is going to help you to develop your approach. It takes time and it takes a lot of patience to kind of work through this and develop the needed plan and skills to help your kiddo to deal with whatever the challenges they may be faced with. So the more strategies your child has, the more successful they're going to be in handling the different types of challenges that they face. So I'm going to talk very briefly on underachievement and 4 potential contributors to that: organization, motivation, study skills and time management, which go hand in hand, and perfectionism. I'm not going to go very deep into perfectionism because I do have an episode on perfectionism coming up. So again, let's talk for a moment just about those 4 different areas, which can be, like I said, potential contributors to underachievement. So let's first define underachievement. According to the National Association for Gifted Children, underachievement is the unanticipated difference between accomplishment and ability. And it can manifest in a lot of different ways. You can see it with students not turning in assignments. You can see it in not having school absences or not participating in class at the same level that they may have at one time. Basically, overall, it's showing kind of a disengagement from the overall educational process. All students can have like short lapses of this where you have, a short time where they may disengage. But we're talking about those times when a student may disengage for longer, and you see that very rapid decline in attention and performance. Underachievement can have lots of different causes that can be interwoven. I already mentioned that you can see some perfectionistic tendencies. You can see it can be interwoven with other sensitivities, with unknown or undiagnosed learning challenges, with a lack of interest in the class or the topic. And it can also be due to a low teacher expectation. We see this a little bit more frequently in students who are twice exceptional or marginalized, but can definitely happen with other students as well. So if you're seeing this being displayed in your child, what can you do? First, you're going to want to talk to your child. See what they're thinking, what they're feeling. It may be a little bit harder to get that information, but I think as a parent you can definitely get a feel for that. And it's important to have their perspective, their insight as you move on to talk then to the teacher to see what they're seeing in the classroom. What's your student saying? Are there things that they're engaging with, and what things are they not engaging with? What are they seeing on the playground or at lunchtime? What are they seeing in terms of your child engaging with their friends? So getting that more full view of your student. So getting the student perspective and the teacher perspective. And then you're going to be set in a better place to kind of start seeking out answers and options. So there are a couple questions that you can ask. Does your child believe he can do the work and has control over how well he does? That's a big one. Does your child see value in the work at school? Another good question. And I would pose those to your kiddo. Some other questions to have in mind. I'm going to take a quick glance down here at my list. I want to make sure that I'm capturing the ones that I want to just share. How have your child's teachers dealt with the situation so far? That's a really good one to talk to the teacher. How have they dealt with that disengagement so far? And have any of the interventions they've used been successful? Are there particular areas or activities that your child really likes at school? And you can get this both from the child and from the teacher. Like when they come running in the door at home at the end of the day, what are the things that they're telling you that they're most excited about? What did they enjoy from their day? And what are the things that they're saying was like, oh, drudgery, they didn't like it, they were bored, or they just, didn't matter. What are those things that they share kind of just off the cuff in those spur of the moment conversations? And do you observe bored behaviors at home? And if so, when? Again, answers to these types of questions are going to be fantastic as you sit down with the educators at your school to seek answers and options and kind of develop a plan for moving forward. So next, we're going to talk about the 4 potential contributing factors to underachievement. So let's start with organization. Organization can be a big one and in some cases easily identified. I know with a couple of my own kiddos, organization was a big issue. So as a parent, I had to step back and kind of take a look at their personal space. Look at the time of day that they sat down to do their homework, where they wanted to sit to do their homework, how they organized not only their space for doing that homework, but then how they organize the actual doing of the homework. Does your child sit at a desk, or do they want to sit on their bed? And I'm not saying there's a right or wrong to any of these, but it's just important observations to make. When they are working on their homework, I know my older kids always like to have some music playing. My younger ones did not. But what type of music? And was it a distraction, or was it music that they could think and still do work to? Did they have a study routine where they sat down at a specific time and began working? And when they got out that work, how did they organize what they were studying? Did they like to do the homework hardest to easiest, easiest to hardest, subject they loved the most, a subject they like the least, or just kind of mixed and peppered through there? Again, looking at all of these different things. with one of my kiddos, taking them to the office supply store here in town seemed to be one of the best things I could have done. I let them look at all the different organizational materials and let them pick what they thought would be the best to set up a system of organization to keep them on track, not lose track of assignments and so forth. They were picking things that I could not figure out how that would ever work, but they were designing their system. Now it did need tweaked, and we did make another trip to the office supply store to pick up some other things. But as they tweaked that, they took real ownership in that. And they really started thinking about how they were planning their work environment and how they were planning doing their work. And so allowing them to do that, even though they ended up with a system that I could never use, it didn't work for me, it worked for them. And because they had developed it and it was specific to them, they felt ownership in that, but it also worked the way their mind worked. So again, just a little tip, taking them and letting them work through that organizational structure can definitely be very helpful. All 4 of my kids, though, have very different ways of organizing their space, different ways of setting up and working on homework or projects, and each one works specific to them, and that's okay. We don't have kids that are all the same, and a single system isn't going to work for each of them. I do feel that having a routine, though, is very important for each student. Now, their routines don't have to be the same. They don't all have to study at the same time, right? But having a routine for each child was definitely important. Another thing to consider is whether or not motivation is a contributing factor. And to understand motivation, it's important to understand how your child is motivated. And there's some really good free online assessments that you can use to help you determine that, whether your child's intrinsically or extrinsically motivated. And knowing which type of motivation they have will help you know how to work best with them for encouragement. So an intrinsically motivated student is one that finds their motivation from an internal force. It's not something that you can see, it's not something you can do or change, it's something within them that drives them. It could be a need, it could be a passion, but there's something within them that drives them, and that is their motivation. For extrinsically motivated kiddos, they're motivated by external forces, and again, it could be anything. It could be seeing you hang that paper on the refrigerator with the A for everybody to see. Or maybe it's knowing that at the end of the grading period, every A will get them $5, or if they miss no classes or miss no school, then they get a certain reward. So they're motivated by things in the outside environment, if you will, instead of the internal environment. Once you know that, like I said, it can help you develop then how you want to help them tackle their challenges. Another technique is connecting the material that they're learning to more of a real-world application. And this is particularly important as they start getting a little bit older. They need to be able to see why the work that they're doing, what they're learning at school, is important for them later in their lives. I think this particular generation that we have in school right now, it's even more important to them than I have seen or experienced in past generations. So let's say your child is studying percentages in school. So a way to help them see that this is something that they are going to need later in life is to take them to the store with you and have them calculate the discounts. When you go by the racks and it says 25% off, have them calculate that and let them see that it's important to know this because you have a specific budget for what you can spend when you're in the store. And so you've got to be able to keep track of that, and knowing your percentage off will help you be able to keep track of that. Another thing, helping them look at a job contract. They can see that, again, thinking about the percentages, that they maybe get a 25% bonus if they complete a certain benchmark 15 days early. So you can talk with them then about what that's going to mean. What does that 25% bonus mean? How do you complete the necessary work to get done 15 days early to get that bonus? So again, lots of different conversations can come from looking at that job contract. So that's just one way that you can help a student connect what they're learning in school to the real world. So next, let's look at study skills and time management. So again, you're going to see a nice graphic there on the screen in front of you, and I want to share a few tips for working with time management and study skills. Like I said, those two things kind of go hand in hand together. So planning time. This is where you help your student to set aside a regular time to study each day. And it's like I mentioned before, it doesn't have to be, each kid has to have the exact same study time. It needs to be something that's specific to them, that it's going to be the time when they're going to be able to work best. One of my kiddos, when they would come home from school, they had to get right on homework. They would go get their snacks, sit at the table. That student liked to sit at the dining room table and eat their snack while they did their work. My son was a little bit different. He would like to come in and have a snack and then go outside for a little while. He was a football player, so he'd go outside, run some drills, and then he would come back in, have dinner, and after dinner, it was time for him to do his homework. He liked to go to his bedroom, sit on his bed, turn on some music, and do his homework there. So each student has a time when it's better for them to study. And so listening to them, watching them, and helping them to identify when that's going to be is really helpful. So then helping them then to set aside that regular study time, whenever it might be, each day. And then helping them to develop good study skills. So organizing what they need to get done, whatever their assignments or projects are. So like I was mentioning before, are they going to do it from hardest to easiest? Are they going to do less loved to most loved? Or are they going to do it in order that they have the class throughout the day? And taking those larger assignments and helping them break it into smaller pieces that are easier to do, so you're not trying to do everything all at once with those big projects. And then encouraging your kiddo to take what we call brain breaks. About every 25 minutes they need to take a 5-minute break. Get up, stand up, walk around, go to another room, get a drink of water, then come back, right? They need to give their brains and their bodies a 5-minute break. Again, that's about every 25 minutes. And then have a process for starting a new task. Some students, the starting can be the hardest part of it. So again, that graphic on the screen, you can kind of take a look at that, where it's stop, think, plan, do. And just something as simple as that can help a student kind of break through that initial piece of getting started that can be so difficult. And then finally, let's talk for a moment about perfectionism. So sometimes perfectionism can get a bad rap, right? Perfectionism isn't always bad. It can be a valuable driving force. And some things like neurosurgery, for example, perfectionism is essential. But for the most part, perfectionism can also be very challenging. For approximately 20% of the high ability population, perfectionism can create problems such as project assignments that are never able to reach perfection, and so they either don't complete it or they don't turn it in. They can experience procrastination and underachievement because of a fear of not being perfect. So a few ideas to help with that. Help your student to stick to a schedule where they spend a specific time limit on assignments. The goal is to complete the assignment, not make it perfect. So if we know that a specific assignment needs about an hour to complete, at an hour, we're going to help our child to put on those finishing touches and walk away from it. It doesn't have to be perfect, We just want to complete the task. Helping them learn then to set priorities within the different tasks that they have, because not every task needs 100% of their energy. Some tasks are smaller and can definitely use less of their overall energy. So helping them to understand that and to set their priorities with that. Helping them to gain balance. Again, that's kind of connected to what I said before, but they're looking to invest enough time so that a project is good enough, but not so much that it's taking up so much time that they don't have the ability to participate in other hobbies or sports or spend time with family or friends. And then expecting progress, not perfection. Encourage attempts and moving toward a goal, but not perfecting the goal. And then encourage and model healthy self-talk. And we kind of have touched on the self-talk already, so I won't go into that here. But those are a few ideas to help counter, if you will, perfectionism. And like I mentioned, I do have an upcoming episode that will dive quite deeply into perfectionism and perfectionistic tendencies. As parents, our kids sometimes think we're perfect, that we don't make mistakes. And it's important that we allow them see us make mistakes and that we share with them about past mistakes that we've made. Allowing them to see us make those mistakes and how we deal with them will help them to adjust the way that they handle mistakes as well. So if things go awry, laugh at them. Let them see that as adults, our first reactions can be to laugh at ourselves. And then what do? Then we pick up the pieces and develop a new plan, or we fix different things. So letting them see first that it's okay to laugh at ourselves, and then we can pick up those pieces. Help them to not make being perfect their identity. There's so much more than trying to be perfect. So help them to see those different aspects of their personality that make them the unique and incredible individual that they are. And then finally, set limits for your child. I mentioned a time limit before for doing those different assignments. It can also be a word limit. It can be a problem count, lots of different things. So they're not being so hyper-focused, but they're learning to have that balance of good enough versus perfection. So again, letting them see us model that is also key to them, because again, they think we're perfect. So we need to show them that we're human. We struggle with things. We may fail, but again, failure is our first attempt in learning, right? And it's helping our brains to grow. So today we have put some definition to high achiever, high ability or gifted learners, and to creative thinkers. We've talked a little bit about the characteristics that each of these three types of learners can have. And we've talked a little bit about motivation and learning, developing a growth mindset, and dealing with different challenges. We've just kind of scratched the surface on all of these, but hopefully it's given you some basic information so that you can take a little bit deeper dive yourself now. I find the quote on the screen so salient. So let's take a moment to read that. What makes a child gifted and talented may not always be good grades in school, but a different way of looking at the world and learning. It's not all about the grades. It's about the way they look at the world and the way that they learn. As parents, it's our responsibility, it's our joy, it's our challenge to help guide our students and to provide them with the resources and the support that they need to grow into the incredible people that they're going to grow into. Thank you so much for joining me as we explored ways of connecting with, understanding, and helping our gifted children. You're going to see on your screen a couple of QR codes. I invite you to join me for one of my upcoming gifted education programs. I have several coming up. One will be on perfectionism that I've mentioned. I have another on parent resources, and we'll touch on advocating for our students. I even have a couple of book reviews that I'm going to do. So I invite you to join me for those and to check out some of our other upcoming programs as well. You'll also see a QR code there to schedule a virtual or in-person appointment with me if you'd just like to dive a little bit deeper into this topic or talk just about what we've discussed today. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I would be more than happy to talk with you. Giftedness isn't a destination, it's a journey worth guiding. Thank you for walking alongside your gifted learner. Have a great day.